Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fifth webinar in the Creating Communities of Welcome series. Today's topic is the first 90 days. This webinar will take you through the process of guiding newcomers during their first 3 months in the United States, from applying to work permits, Social Security cards, government benefits if qualified, healthcare enrollments, enrolling children in school, and other ways to help newcomers adjust to their life in their new communities. My name is Mykola Murskyj. I am the Director for Government Affairs at Razum. Razum means together in Ukrainian, and we are a Ukrainian-American nonprofit that's based in New York and in Washington that seeks to help build a prosperous and democratic Ukraine. I am working with the advocacy team in Washington, D.C., making sure that our federal public officials remember that America has important interests in the security and stability of Ukraine. Joining me as speakers today are Sediqa Fahimi. She's the Director of Project Operations and Strategy at Welcome US, as well as Gregory Marino. He's the Program Officer for Community Sponsorship Training at the International Rescue Committee. Before we start, I just wanted to give a few housekeeping points. First, today's webinar is being recorded and the chat is disabled. So if you have any questions at any time, feel free to use the Q&A function in the Zoom toolbar. And to keep this event a safe and supportive environment for all participants, we will remove any attendees who engage in any form of harassing, offensive, discriminatory, threatening speech or behavior. With that, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with Greg. Greg, so the first week will set the stage for how well newcomers adjust to their new homes in the United States. What would you say is most important, most critical for sponsors to consider during that first all-important week?
Well, thank you, Mykola, for the introduction, and I apologize I'm not on camera with technical difficulties, so we'll have to do this NPR style. But thank you for this opportunity to go over these very important milestones as sponsors who are either in the midst of sponsoring Ukrainian families or about to. So in the first week, as the slide indicates, these are three broad themes that are very important to take care of in the first week. You certainly want to provide a welcoming and secure and supportive environment, making sure that the home is in good condition, and to make sure that the family feels welcome, as they've been through a lot. They've been through quite an upheaval in the last several months, and so we just want to make sure that they feel comfortable in their new surroundings. And in line with that, you want to provide an orientation for the family to their new environment. So after you meet the family at the airport, you want to take them to their new home and provide them with a ready-to-eat, culturally appropriate meal, as we say in refugee resettlement. And that could either be home-cooked, ideally, or from a Ukrainian restaurant. You also want to provide brief orientation to their new housing. Certainly want to give them emergency contact numbers, not only to teach them how to use 911 and how to ask for an interpreter if they're not comfortable calling 911 in English, but also to have the number of the sponsors or any other members in the community that will be helping you support the family. You also want to orient them to the neighborhood and provide them some basic maps just to get them around. You also want to take this opportunity to start to get to know the family, at a reasonable pace. They could have been coming off a very long flight or several hours in transit, but nonetheless, you want to, start to get to know these newcomers that you are helping. At the same time, you also want to, as early as possible, to set realistic expectations about the support that you're offering, because it is not all inclusive. It isn't that way for refugees or asylees either. They're kind of going to be starting off at a basic level. And as we'll get into in the next few moments, we'll talk about how benefits applications and employment authorization will definitely play a big role in helping them set these expectations. You certainly also want to make sure that any urgent healthcare needs are addressed and that they're connected with an appropriate medical professional as soon as possible if it's an emergency, but also to have medical resources set up so that they can get their medical screenings. You also want to provide the family with some pocket money to help them support their independence. Best practices in refugee resettlement tends to be $50 per adult, $25 per child, at least at arrival. You also, once the family is settled, you want to get them acquainted, and getting them acquainted with their community. You want to support the newcomers in going shopping. And ideally, you should choose a store that has affordable groceries and staples, and ideally one that might offer culturally specific foods. And you also want to be able to point the family towards shopping resources for clothing, footwear, and other necessities that are affordable. At some point, when you're in a comfortable disposition and you're sitting around getting to know each other, you might want to bring up what their hopes for the future are, without getting into too much detail, because you certainly don't want to overwhelm them. But you want to, certainly offer to, discuss what they are thinking about doing and how best you might be able to help them navigate their hopes for the future. You definitely want to discuss how finances and household budgets are going to be working, particularly at the point that they arrive. They're not going to have very many resources. They're going to be dependent on you financially. But as they obtain work authorization and any cash benefits that they may be eligible for, those can be worked into the budget as those items are introduced. You also want to set expectations on the type of and length of support that they will receive. And that's going to be dependent on a lot of factors. Some of it is going to be subject to bureaucracy, and some of it is just simply going to be a factor of time. You also want to make sure that you fully understand the conditions of the newcomer's humanitarian parole status, such as any additional immigration paperwork that was filed when they entered the country, and to make sure that vaccination requirements stipulated in their payroll documents are up to date and met. You can check on those requirements and review them at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services site, uscis.gov.
Fascinating. Thanks, Greg. I wanted to ask quickly, so you said $50 per adult and $25 per child. Is that per day, per week? What was the time frame there?
Well, I think that's, initially just so that they have some cash. Certainly the sponsor will, stock the family's fridge with groceries for at least a week. And then it will just simply become a matter between the sponsor and the newcomers on, an agreed upon budget. Sometimes, as I have done in past positions where I've worked with asylum seekers, we tried to model the cash stipend, which is effectively what a sponsor would be providing, to have that roughly match what government benefits would provide, so that once those government benefits are available, then they can get used to budgeting on those amounts.
Okay, I see. Interesting. So, Greg, can you tell us a little bit about what the first couple of months should look like? So we know that it's important for newcomers to begin to adjust to their new life in their new homes and begin the process of rebuilding their lives. But what are the next steps to ensure that this process of rebuilding goes well?
All right. Well, as is often the case when any newcomers arrive in the country, there's a lot of activity within the first month, setting up, school enrollment and applying for work authorization. I actually want to focus on the work authorization and Social Security card first, because they should apply for those as soon as possible. The sponsor or should help the newcomer do this. The work authorization application is available online, and it is also possible to apply for a Social Security card at the same time. Those two items should be applied for as soon as possible, because the newcomers cannot work until they have what is called an employment authorization document, or EAD. That's effectively a work authorization card. They must have that in hand in addition to having a Social Security card in order to demonstrate that they're eligible to work. So it's very important that everyone understand this, that it could take anywhere from 2 to 3 months or longer to obtain an EAD. But in some of the research that I've done, if you do this electronically, it's likely that it will be processed faster, but not that much faster. So there is going to be a period during which the newcomers who are of working age will not be able to work. But there are other things that can be done, that can be set in motion, that will help the family acclimate while they wait for bona fide work authorization and their Social Security documents. As I had mentioned in the previous section, they definitely want to make sure that they take care of their health screenings, particularly for the children. Any school-age children, of course, would have to have initial health screenings done in order to be cleared for school enrollment. They should also contact their local social services agency in the state that they live in to see what benefits they are eligible for. The Federal Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is part of the Department of Health and Human Services, has authorized, the eligibility to apply for cash assistance for families as well as single people and childless couples. But every state regulates those benefits differently. So they should definitely look into, if the family is already here, contacting social services to assess their eligibility for cash, food stamps, or SNAP, which is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or Medicaid, in order to assess their eligibility. So that should be done, probably as soon as you finish applying for the work authorization and Social Security card, to make sure that that is in process. You also want to investigate not only the health screenings for the school enrollment, but you also, with respect to school enrollment, the sponsor plays a very important role in introducing parents to the school system. It should be emphasized that all public schools in the United States are required to provide interpretation, so that should not discourage the given school from communicating directly with the parents. The sponsor can play an important role in setting up the school enrollment and making sure all of that goes well. But ultimately, just as it would be for American families, the parents are involved in their children's education, and so newcomer parents should also enjoy that privilege. And so that is something that the sponsor can definitely play a role in. And likewise, they should also look into English language training, depending on the proficiency of the newcomers. Adult education programs in communities all over the United States offer English language training programs. Those who have high school education may qualify to be able to take such courses at community colleges. You should check in your state. I'm not familiar with the requirements in every state, but in the state where I live, in Connecticut, a high school diploma is required for anyone to enroll in English classes. So that's something to look into. You can also look into setting up checking accounts or saving accounts, depending on the policy of the banks in your area with respect to setting up accounts for humanitarian parolees. The sooner that they can have a bank account, the better, but depending on the requirements of the bank, you may have to rely on accessing cash benefits or stipends from the co-sponsor to pay bills, depending on what financial resources are available at a given time. In addition, you want the family to be as independently mobile as possible. So if you have public transportation in your area, we would encourage you to ride along with the family on public transportation, so that the family knows where to go to shop, to go to the post office for mail, to go to the library, which also has a lot of community resources, affordable grocery stores, parks, where the children go to school, doctor's offices, and places of worship, if that applies to the newcomer. And once the family is accustomed to public transportation, depending on their financial situation, the sponsor may wish to purchase bus passes for the family to save money, perhaps on a monthly basis. Now, childcare is, of course, an enormous issue for everyone in this country. And unfortunately, just like English language training, it is not standardized across the United States. So what I generally recommend, have recommended in past positions and in my current position, is to source local childcare resources. And most states have reduced childcare programs that are tied to either employment programs or cash assistance programs. You can also, through the resources of the sponsor, look out for childcare resources in their communities where they may be able to get, a scholarship or reduced costs, after some negotiating. You'd be surprised at how welcoming the communities that that you live in actually are when you seek these kinds of resources out. And the only other thing that I would mention is that once they have their documentation, namely their EAD and their Social Security card, that would enable them to be able to apply for either a state ID or a driver's license in the state in which they live. You certainly want, depending on the state in which you live, you need to just check into what the requirements are for obtaining state IDs and for going about getting a driver's license. In the Northeast of the US, it is a little bit more complicated. In other states in the Midwest, it's not as complicated. A particular note would be to check to see if the language of the newcomer, namely Ukrainian, is available for the knowledge test portion of the driver's license exam, while noting that in most states, I believe, the road test is conducted in English.
Okay, interesting. Thanks, Greg. I have one more question for you before we turn to Sediqa. So at the end of the 90 days, are there any milestones that newcomers should have accomplished that will set them up for later success?
Certainly, the items on the slide are certainly very important. Managing the household budget, that is something that should be begun as early as possible in the first 3 months, so that they become accustomed to the kinds of bills that they need to pay and how much things cost, et cetera. If they are able to open a bank account, or if once they obtain their Social Security number, they may be able to put their names on the lease so that they can build credit, that is really important. But given that there could be some time before the family has bona fide work authorization, there are things that can be done, to prepare for that. And, so certainly by the 3rd month, the sponsor, should have had conversations with the employable adults in the household to get a sense of what their skills are and what they would like to do. And in that time period, leading up to month 3, they should have a relatively good idea of what kind of resources are available to help someone prepare either for the profession that they already have from Ukraine, or perhaps adapting their credentials to something that is more suitable in the short term. And there may be training programs that are accessible without having work authorization that they may be able to enroll in, whether that's at a community college or whether it's through an adult learning center. But certainly developing English language skills, should be something that is done pretty regularly, as soon as possible. I have advised community groups when they ask me when should we start speaking English to the newcomers, I say immediately, so that they get accustomed to hearing English and hearing certain words, being able to form certain sentences, ask questions, and continue to do that on a regular basis through the first 3 months. This is not to say that one cannot get a job without speaking perfect English, far from that. But by the end of the 3rd month, the employable adults should be comfortable enough to express themselves concisely with the vocabulary that they have, and being able to express what kind of jobs they want, why they want them, and how they can do them.
Okay, awesome. Greg mentioned that employment is a key way that newcomers can begin the rebuilding process. So once newcomers receive their appropriate work authorizations, the priority becomes helping them find secure and dignified employment. So what recommendations and resources are there for sponsors to help guide newcomers through this process?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for the questions. So I would start with what Greg finished, is that the first you understand your newcomers' skills and background, what English skills and other language skills and the soft and technical skills they have, what are their backgrounds, what education they have, and what industry they want to work. So as Greg mentioned it, that it is really important that while even they are applied for the work authorization card, while they are waiting to get this card, you can start working with them to understand, to navigate the job market, to navigate their skills, to navigate which company they want to work. So there are a lot of resources and organizations that are supporting newcomers to get jobs. So I will start with your local workforce development center, or we can call it yes. So thank you for the career1stop.org. You can go there and American Job Centers. So you can find the nearest local job center to your areas, and you can go there, and they have resume building, they have job navigations, and also trainings. So you can help the newcomer to find those opportunity in there. There are also apprenticeship organization .gov. If the newcomer is not ready to join a specific industry right now, they can join as an organization, as an apprenticeship, and learn while they are working and earning. So there are a lot of companies and organizations, they have these opportunities to learn on the on the job, and while even you are earning. The other resource that we have at the welcome.us, Aborde Global is a national organization that is a big a partner of us. They are working specifically with high to mid skilled newcomers to help them to get ready and provide them job readiness training, review their resumes, build their resumes, and coach them where they can apply, how they can apply, and be ready for the for interviews and onboarding. So they are specifically working with the newcomers one-on-one to get jobs. We also are working with React DC, who have another platform, React Work. They are also connecting with the employers, helping a lot. So the other opportunity I want to mention, that Goodwill is a very national and nonprofit organization that have local branches, and they have a lot of job fair and also trainings for your newcomers. They are working specifically for the underserved communities, but newcomers are part of that. So they have hiring fairs on the spot, they have job fairs, they have career building training. So please check that and help your newcomers to go there while they are waiting for their work authorization card. And I mentioned the Coursera. So Coursera is also, they are providing a lot of technical trainings that if your newcomer get registered with the Aborde Global, they will be able to connect them with the Coursera on the programs and training they are interested to learn. So the other resource that welcome.us built after the fall of Kabul and evacuation of thousands Afghans, there's that welcome employment exchange, which is open for all the newcomers. So since January 2022, we have more than 300 companies on the website, and there are more than 68,000 open roles across the country. So you can I do the demo? So if you are a sponsor and you want to help your a newcomer, you go here in our website, welcome.us, and you say find resources, and find resources for the communities. So you say that search job for newcomers. you will land in this page. You can, based on the understanding your newcomer background, if they are working, for example, in information technology and service, you select that, and you select how far it should be from the area you are. For example, I say that 50 miles, and I will say search. So this will be like, you can post your zip code. For example, I will put this zip code 7, and I search. So you can find jobs, like, for example, right now, only this job is in this specific area. But if I say general, and it's like wherever job there are in this area, and that will show up for me. So you can, post this type of jobs, filter it based on the categories we have it here, or if you couldn't, you can find based on the organization and put their keywords here, and also postcode and the distance you want to see, that 100 miles, 50 miles. So this is, you can find thousands of open roles. If your newcomers are interested, and you are interested to get to connected to those companies, you can directly email to the jobs@welcome.us. We will be happy to connect you with those companies. But generally, those companies, when you help your newcomer to apply, just mention that you heard about the job from welcome.us, and they will be very happy to help, because we are in very regular base, we work with these companies to inform them, to give information who these newcomers are, why they should hire, and what skills and backgrounds, mostly in average, they have.
Thank you so much, Sediqa. So I think we'll move to the Q&A portion now. The first question that we have is, where do we apply for work authorizations? Is that something that's done at the federal or the state level?
You need to apply for the employment authorization document through the government. You need to do it online. So the form is I-765. So if you Google I-765, it should take you to the USCIS website where you can begin the application.
Okay, awesome. Can we apply for work authorizations before somebody actually arrives in the US, or does it have to be done once they get here?
They must be in the United States.
Okay. And then is it possible to get a social security card or number for a minor child, like somebody who's not working age, no I-765?
Well, technically, for humanitarian parolees, the I-765 is mainly for the working age adults. I mean, usually refugees, when they come into the country, every family member gets them. And in my experience working with Afghan evacuees, the same thing came to pass. So if you can apply for a Social Security card at the same time that you're applying for an EAD, and that may be easier than going to a Social Security office, because there are many Social Security offices around the country that are still not open to the public for new applications, which is highly problematic. Once you're in the system, you can basically do everything online, but depending on where you are in the country, it might be very challenging to actually apply for Social Security cards at the Social Security office in person. You cannot apply for a Social Security card online. So my best advice at this juncture would be to apply for both at the same time through the EAD application.
Got it. Okay. And so you can't apply for work authorization before you actually arrive in the US, but what about a social security number? Do you have to be here as well for that?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, understood. So can somebody who's a newcomer, can they apply for healthcare online?
That's a tricky question, because there are a lot of social services offices in states around the country that are still not open to the public and require that you apply online for TANF, which is temporary temporary assistance for needy families, or cash assistance, SNAP, and Medicaid. So you can apply for all those online in many states. But applying online, I would recommend pursuing publicly funded benefits before venturing into the Affordable Care Act exchanges, because that's sort of the last stop if one is not eligible for state coverage.
Got it. Understood. So that's healthcare.gov. What about state benefits? So are people who come over on humanitarian parole, are they eligible for Medicaid or state level benefits?
Yes, that's why they should contact the social services agency in their state, because all public benefits are essentially administered at the state level, with the exception of some federal programs. But cash assistance, SNAP, and Medicaid are all managed by each state with their own regulations. But there are certain, blanket regulations that are established by the Office of Refugee Resettlement as late as May 21st, I believe, is when Ukrainian parolees under this program became eligible to apply for federal benefits, but you apply at the state level.
Okay, great. Sediqa, did you have anything you wanted to add to any of those questions?
No, I would be happy to answer any question related to employment.
Okay, great. I think the next one is about tickets, right? So how do we get airline tickets to get here? Are the sponsors responsible? Are there resources? Are there discounts on tickets to try and get to the United States? Is that something that exists?
I'm not aware of any, because I mainly deal with refugees, and the International Organization for Migration facilitates refugee travel. But since they don't have refugee status, IOM would not be a place to go. And I'm not familiar with, specific sponsor requirements under this program. I would, it's possible that they may need to pay for the airfare for the family to get here, if that's the only way that can happen.
Here's the next question. How do we go about arranging vaccination and medical screening? Is there a list of doctors who perform these services?
The best thing to do is to contact your local health department, and they can either administer those vaccinations themselves, or they can refer you to a community health center that would be able to see them.
Got it. Okay. Great. Here's one question. Do I need to submit the family income that I'm staying with while applying for benefits?
That I am not sure of, and it probably varies by state.
Okay.
ORR, made a point of extending these benefits for a reason, knowing that many people would be sponsored. So I would like to think that that would not be something you would have to do, but it's always good to check, because some states have, stricter asset requirements than others.
Got it. Okay. Do you know if Ukrainian refugees qualify for discounts on cell phones and internet service? Is that a thing that is possible, or do they pay full price for phone and internet?
Well, as low-income residents of the U.S., they would qualify for reduced internet in their communities. It used to be limited to families that had children in school, with low-income families with children in school. But because of the pandemic, it was extended to all low-income households. So anyone who is sponsoring or is about to sponsor a Ukrainian family should look into low-income internet options in their area and figure out how best to set that up. I can tell you that in Connecticut, it's very reasonable. It's about $20 a month, which is very manageable.
Great, that's fantastic. So I wanted to ask, do either of you know what the typical percentage is of Ukrainians that speak English?
Based on what I know, we got collect, there is not a specific data right now. We can talk based on that data, but best what we understand, and we got collected data from information from our colleagues in Ukrainian, that at least 30 to 40% of them are speaking fluently or very professionally English, but until like 70% they do somehow understand English. So it's English is quite good among Ukrainians.
Okay.
Yeah, those statistics don't surprise me. I don't know exactly, but one could argue that Ukrainian, being an Indo-European language, it's a little bit easier to learn English because of grammar structure, and it's just a matter of well, of course, writing in Roman letters as well, but in the limited number of Ukrainian families that I have worked with in the past, they tend to learn English pretty quickly.
Okay, great. It looks like there's one more question in the chat. The current EAD processing times run anywhere from 5.5 months to as much as 11.5 months, depending on which office the application is filed with. Are sponsors expected to support the family for as long as a year before they get employment?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. Unfortunately, that EAD is critical. And as I said earlier, based on information that I obtained recently, if you apply for the EAD online, rather than attempt to go to a USCIS office, which is not present everywhere, you're likely to get it quicker. I mean, the family is not going to be able to work until they have that credential. And so I would say, yes, they would require support until they're able to work.
Okay, awesome. Let's see, do we have any other questions? I'm just going through the list here. Greg, I think it might be useful if you just summarized very briefly what the order of operations should be, right? EAD, Social Security, school, like what would be the checklist, and in what order would you do it when somebody first arrives?
Okay, obviously you want to prioritize any health issues that must be addressed immediately, but assuming that they can wait for a health screening, they should apply for their EAD and Social Security cards as soon as possible. And after that, apply for state benefits. And after that, health screenings for as many family members as possible, so that the kids can be cleared for school, so that the kids can start attending school, and then English language training should also begin within roughly 2 weeks of their arrival.
Yes, I want to add the last step is that Greg mentioned that because of the sponsors are worried about their financial independency, so it is good to start looking for jobs, attending to local hiring fairs and job fairs, and navigating that of resources and finding opportunities for the newcomers. So that can be the last step or the fifth one.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
I would certainly agree with that, but we also need to manage the newcomers' expectations because of the fact that the EAD controls their ability to work. So, as long as they're introduced to employment, in a gradual way, I have no problem with that. I just, hesitate to create any expectation that by going to a job fair that they're going to be able to work, or that they'd be tempted to work without being work authorized, because that would absolutely jeopardize their immigration status.
Got it, for sure. Okay. Let's see. Are the employers on the employment exchanges, are they specifically anticipating applications from international applicants?
So these employers who post jobs on the employment exchange, they express their interest to hire Ukrainian and Afghans newcomer who we are working with directly, and they are not, based on the United States labor law, they cannot discriminate and say no to other people applicants, but they are specifically targeting and they have hiring initiatives to hire newcomers.
Okay, that's good to hear. Okay, well, I'd like to thank the panelists. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Sediqa, for joining us today. And I'd like to invite